What do you get when you combine a passion for building diverse teams, creating a reverse mentoring culture, and giving back to the community through volunteerism and kindness? You get Barry Coziahr, founder and president of Team Builders, a virtual personnel agency that supports small business owners. In this episode, Barry and I will talk about all three of his passions and how his empathetic leadership style creates a collaborative environment that creates value for his customers. This is E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy. Hi, Barry. It's so nice to have you on the show today. I know we've been talking a lot offline in the last few months, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation because you own two businesses, you have a really unique team set up, and I think you have a lot to share with our audience today with regards to leadership and team cohesion.
Absolutely. Just really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Cool. So, I mean, let's start with team cohesion. I know when we talked, you were mentioning that you have a really diverse leadership team, and you work closely with a network of experts based in the Philippines, India, and South America. So, all parts of the world. Tell me, how do you deal with cultural differences to ensure the whole team works collaboratively to achieve the best outcomes for your clients?
Yeah, that's funny because now we kind of have to educate our clients on that a little bit too. It actually makes for a smoother time when we let them know what the differences are, or that there are differences, so they can kind of understand. Uh, but one of the things is, I mean, taking a little bit of time to understand holidays, communication styles, work expectations. Um, Holidays is a big deal, right? Letting people know about the culture itself, that it's a highly spiritual culture. Most people go to a Christian church. Families live together, fairly large groups of families quite often will live together. Holidays are hugely important to them. And the Filipino holidays, you should get a copy of the calendar and sync it with your Google Calendar or whatever calendar you use. Uh, those are just some of the basics for respect. Be open to communication, right? It is a big part of it. Really be open to communication, feedback. Have somebody on the team who can kind of liaise as well and talk to the people in that country. Somebody who's got great communication with you, that can act as a liaison. Somebody who maybe is a higher paid person, who's a little bit higher management type person. And we have those. We provide those for our clients. We've got a couple that they'll get in communication with the assistants and find out things that I might not find out, and the clients might not find out, and then they'll let us know and come up with the solutions, or often just solve the problem because it might be a bit of a communication barrier. The language barrier can be a deal. I have somebody who handles that for our clients and for ourselves. And, I think those are some of the primary things, really setting expectations and time, what you expect, putting it in writing very clearly, making sure there's no disagreement, having a good flow of information back and forth and staying in good communication is key. Basically, if you understand those things, you're a long ways towards conquering just about anything. A really good author once said that manners consist of observing local rituals, good two-way communication, not just you talking to them, but back and forth, and granting importance to people, realizing that people are important and including their family members. So if you do those things, that's basic manners is what we're talking about. And gosh, with the advent of AI, you could even look up and find out about some of the cultural manners that you might, how can I show good manners when dealing with someone from country X, right? And you get data, right? What holidays? How can I sync? How can I get those holidays onto my calendar so I know what's happening? Uh, can anything I can do about those holidays to let them know that I think their culture is special as well? The basics are the first things I said, and then if you want to go the extra mile, you can add those other things too.
I love that you mentioned using AI to help understand another culture as well. I mean, these are tools that we didn't even have 10 years ago. And I was just thinking, sitting on my bookshelf behind me is a book called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. And I don't know if you read it, but um, she basically consults companies who are having difficulties working with teams across different cultures. And she essentially provides a map for leaders to use in understanding, okay, if you have a team based in the Philippines and a team based in Brazil, what is the landscape of that culture? What is the typical leadership style, et cetera? And how would you be able to then collaborate as two teams from those different regions? So it basically gives you a map of and a toolkit to help understand that. But for leaders who just want a basic understanding of how to work with teams from different cultures, AI is a great place to start.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, for to use Brazil as an example, if you're dealing with somebody from Brazil, they like small talk apparently. And I'd say like a little bit of small talk about family, sports, especially soccer, maybe their personal interests before you get into the business. These are warm and expressive and direct, yet diplomatic people. Uh, you got to pay attention to the verbal cues because they're expressive. And yeah, meetings might not always start on time. This is, a thing to realize. Be punctual yourself, and that shows you being professional. You might run into meetings not starting on time and realize that that is just a cultural thing. You know, they may have something going on with the family, and so they're going to run a few minutes late, and they have to do something for the kids or whatever, and that's just the way it is, and they don't consider it to be a problem. So there you go.
Yeah, I know we often talk about the barriers we encounter when we have multicultural connections and communications and things that are lost in translation. But let's kind of flip that around a little bit. I'm just curious, what do you see as the biggest benefit of working with teams from such diverse cultures? How has that helped you in your business?
Well, I mean, people have their strengths, right? Everybody has their strengths, but people from the Philippines are highly educated and they value education tremendously. Many of them have multiple degrees. And so that's to your benefit. I mean, you can take and teach them and train them and even, offer them courses where they can train on things you want them to know. I offer them certification and they'll think that's a tremendous bonus. So you learn these things and you figure out how to take, so if something's going on, if there's something that's a factor, how can you grant importance to that, acknowledge it with them, and also use it, use it to your advantage. Like provide them training with certification, so that they really understand things that you want them to know. And that's just one thing you can do.
That's a great example of really harnessing the strengths of that culture to help them and help you as well. So
Mhm.
let's go back to the topic of AI. I know we've talked a lot about how you love to empower young talent, and you told me in one of our conversations offline about how with AI we need to be careful. We need to make sure we trust people and not machines.
Right.
And we talked about the opportunity for young people who are really well versed in this technology, where they've grown up with cell phones and social media, and it comes natural to them. You were telling me how reverse mentoring would be super beneficial. How the younger generation can mentor the older generations. So
So,
how are you capitalizing on this in your business and translating that into an opportunity for your team?
yeah, it's like, I mean, will they get, an older person might have a little bit, be very intimidated by computers and what they can do these days, whereas a younger person, like you said, they've been playing with an iPad since they were in the crib, and and they can teach. So the iPad's just an extent; it's just another tool. It's not a big deal. They don't have anything on it, and they can actually show if they learn how to be patient and teach and slow down and like I center a lot on teaching. I can teach them how to teach. Yeah, you can't use words that they don't understand. You have to respect the language barrier of the young versus the old, not just different countries, but there can literally be a language barrier between generations. right? People talk about language barriers and dealing with the remote workers in other countries. There are language barriers between generations where terminology having to do with technology is intimidating. And if you have to break it down and come up with ways to explain technology that anybody can understand, and that puts it in a perspective that they can think with. You get mail, it travels electronically. Good. I can understand mail. Good. You know, junk mail. Oh, spam. Good. There's just lots of ways to explain it, demonstrate it, show them how to use it, break it down in simple steps, help them practice using it. And there you go. That is ideal reverse mentoring. Basically, bringing fresh perspective. There's so many tools that the younger people know so much more about. There's some older people that are really up on it, though. They know more about technology than anybody. Treat it person by person. You can't just assume that they're not going to know just because of their age. Don't assume that they are going to know because of their age either, because you can be surprised in both instances.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we tend to, as humans, we love to put things into boxes and categorize things. And so it's easy to make assumptions about generations and cultures and preferences. So you're right. It's very much on an individual basis and fine tuning it that way. So how have you seen an impact? I mean, we've talked a lot about internally how you function as an organization and how you have a teaching culture and a collaborative culture. How does that translate to customer success?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you find out what the customer needs, what they need to be trained on, or you take things off their plate that they can't or don't want to learn, that they never want, they know they must do social media in their business, but they want nothing to do with it in some cases. So we're like, okay, good, we'll handle it for you. You'll never have to go look at Facebook. And they're like, great, perfect. And that's simple and a good way to go about handling things. So it's really just, I mean, it goes back to communication and finding out what the person really, really, truly needs and wants, what they're comfortable with, and then working with them.
Can you give an example of maybe one of the biggest challenges one of your customers has faced and how your team has used its collaborative nature to work together to address that challenge?
Sure. Like we have clients that know that they need to be doing certain marketing actions, and they want more leads, but they don't have time to do the actions. Like a good way to look at it is there's a principle called the 80-20 principle, where 80% of your results are produced by 20% of your efforts. There's great books on it. The 80-20 principle is a great book. There's a bunch of books that kind of base their what they're talking about on that book as a foundation. But the 20% tasks are, if we talk to them and find out what are the key things in their business that they must do more of, then we can do one of two things. We can either take things off their plate that allow them to do more of that, or we can augment that action, that 20% action, by giving them support functions. And allows them to be collaborative to help grow the business. Because those are the two things. Like lead generation is an easy one. If we can fill up a person's calendar so he's seeing more prospects, and we give him an inexpensive team that's going to work on actions that are going to do that, or make his phone ring in some way, that's definitely key. And then there's other things that might, burden you, like taxes and accounting functions. Well, that's something you should definitely outsource. I mean, because if you're the person who's supposed to be selling, then the biggest thing your accountant needs is more money, so they can make sure those bills are paid. So go sell instead. So there's lots of ways to look at it and take things off your plate inexpensively. That would allow you to do more of the key things that are going to really move the needle on your business.
Yeah, it sounds like your team really is almost that behind the scenes support for clients. Really lifting that burden of administrative tasks that can be very time consuming. I'm starting to understand now why it's so important for your team to be well connected, collaborative, because you have to be cohesive to be able to be that function for someone. You have to act as one and be able to come to the client as one voice rather than a bunch of individual voices. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but I'm very interested in the volunteer work that you've done outside of your typical business operations, because I do think volunteering instills a certain type of leadership style in all of us. How would you say this work has shaped the way you lead your team and conduct business?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I started doing volunteer work because I wanted to help people figure out how to be kinder to each other. That was kind of like to teach them some things that would help them to be more decent to each other. So I think that's been a focus of my life, for all through my volunteer work, is just to treat each other decent, which includes not ripping you off and not loafing, and overburdening somebody else on the team. And those are all part of treating other people decent, right? And I've spent a long time looking at the whole subject of kindness in general. And you're not doing somebody a favor if you're letting them hurt other people. Sometimes you have to get in the way and stop people when they're doing that, and say, nope, you can't do that anymore. Sorry, you're fired. Come back if you want to fix that, come back. Here's some stuff you could read so you could adjust your moral compass a bit. And, some of firing is the kindest thing to do, because if they stick around, then one, they're going to keep abusing their fellow worker, and that's going to make not just the other workers unhappy, but them unhappy in the long run too. And two, it's going to damage the overall team and the group, so everybody's going to prosper less. So it's funny to talk about something that would normally be considered mean as an act of kindness. But if you really start understanding kindness in general, you realize that you're not helping anybody by letting them drag other people down.
Yeah, I've had conversations before with other guests on my show where we've talked about how it takes is one bad apple to really create this toxic environment within an entire team.
Yeah.
And to your point, it is the best thing you can do for that person and for the team is to let them go.
Yeah, we teach this character education guide, and this is important for AI too, right? You realize AI has no ethics, right? AI doesn't have an ethical or moral compass. It is programmed by a person who may or may not have programmed a moral compass into it. But even AI gets confused, and it can't even tell you the difference between good and evil. It's amazing. You could try to get it to coax it to tell you about what is evil. It just won't do it. It just won't. It's just like, come on, there is such thing as evil in the world. Come on, but it was amazing. Finally, I had to say, okay, from this person's viewpoint, would that person be considered evil? Well, yes, from so-and-so's viewpoint, that would be considered evil action. Oh, okay, great. From some sort of religious perspective or something. There are sins, 7 deadly ones per certain writings. So AI doesn't have an ethical or moral standard. So we teach a common sense guide to better living, which is non-secular. It's not religious. It basically just goes over what I would consider to be commonly held principles of moral conduct, and like treat others the way you'd want to be treated, support a government designed and ran for all the people, take care of yourself, love and help children, honor and respect your parents, do not steal, do not murder, be industrious, be competent. It's a character education guide called The Way to Happiness. And it's a guide that we teach our staff. And if they slip and they start treating other people bad, or if they feel like they're slipping in some way, we have them go back and restudy this. We have them study it as part of our culture for the business, right? Because we talked about respecting their culture. Well, the business has a culture too, and needs to be respected as well. Respect goes both ways. Funnily enough, the principles in this book are common of any culture. And they're just like, be faithful to your sexual partner, things like that, things you'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
And so, so if we teach those, And then if a person slips, we reteach them. There can be a time where, oh, wow, that was too big of an error. We're just going to stop for now. You need to go re-examine your life a little bit, and then you can come back if you want. Anyway, great principles. I highly recommend it.
That's wonderful. I mean, the fact that you're teaching this to your team, that's a step ahead of what I think a lot of business leaders are doing.
Anybody can. The course is free, by the way. It's on their website. It's a free course called The Way to Happiness. I don't think anybody could disagree with the principles. And yeah, every business owner could use it and integrate it into what they're doing to elevate their business culture and to elevate and you elevate their lives at the same time.
Yeah, I think you made an important point just there. It's whatever you're experiencing at work, it comes home with you. It affects your personal life. And I know you said in the earlier part of our conversation that it's important to you to care about people's families.
Mm-hmm.
Because you, as a business owner, feel responsible for, I mean, these people are basically under your care for a majority of their weekdays, right? So it's an incredible responsibility. And the fact that you're taking it seriously and ensuring these people come home from work feeling empowered, inspired, like they have a nurturing environment where they can do their daily job, that's really critical, because then they're going to sit down at the dinner table at night and have a positive conversation with their family rather than just complaining or ranting.
Right. Yeah, they can talk about there's there's virtues, and in this booklet where it talks about treat others the way you'd want to be treated, and there's a list of like these virtues: trustworthiness, loyalty, friendship, love, right? And one of the recommendations it gives in that chapter is practice one of those a day. Really focus on one of them a day, and you can just rotate through them, and it gets you, just kind of focus on doing that. And it's really good. What a great exercise. I've seen people shift completely. I used to use this in my nonprofit work, and we had a young man come in with his dad. So we don't know what to do with him. He's doing this and that. We don't know what to do with him. He's getting more and more trouble all the time. We're afraid next time he's going to, go to jail. We won't be able to help him. Okay. So the kid had a criminal record, so I wasn't going to accept him to go work with it's not the kind of place we had. We didn't have a juvenile hall, but I know that they use this program in juvenile program, and they use it in prisons too, as well as just general character education in businesses, right? So I just had the kids sit down, and I gave them a home study course that they use, have them study it right there, right? And his girlfriend sent a message back. She said, "What did you do to him? It's like it's not the same guy. It's one. Thank you so." And after reading this, he got rid of a bunch of bad habits, and he wasn't somebody different. He was just more him and less the junk.
Yeah. So you were just kind of help him take away that layer of.
Yeah, he'd been set really bad examples by people in his environment. Unfortunately, we get some really bad examples in their lives of how to behave, and we adopt those bad behaviors because we perceive them as the right thing to do. We make our own mistakes and transgress, or sin, or whatever you want to call it, and then we tend to try to make ourselves right by continuing to do that same thing that we did once that we felt a bit ashamed of, or we did accidentally, or whatever. And so, but reading this kind of like helps you kind of like, make a fresh start, because it's really well written. It helps you make a new decision about these behavior patterns.
Well, that's really refreshing. I'm so happy I can share with my listeners a new tool that might help people who are struggling themselves, or friends or family or colleagues who are struggling and don't know where to start.
Yeah, we distribute it in St. Louis. There's one area of St. Louis that's pretty crime ridden, and we distributed enough copies for every person in this part of the city. And it was the only part of the city that year that had a decrease in crime rate.
Wow. That sold me right there. Can't wait to look into it.
We'd heard about it being done in other countries where they distributed so many copies that the crime rate went down. So we said, okay, How many people are in this area? Good. Let's make sure we distribute that many booklets in that area, and let's see what happens. And then the crime statistics were released, and exactly what they said would happen, or happened in other places, happened in St. Louis. And you're like, oh, great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I knew you would have an interesting answer for how your volunteer work takes you into your leadership work in your business. But wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was more than I imagined, and a great way to wrap up the dialogue. This was really inspiring. I've learned so much from how to communicate well with different generations and different cultures. And yeah, I'd say my biggest takeaway from you today, Barry, was just how important kindness is. And I mean, obviously, this is a podcast that talks about empathy in the workplace. The story that you provided is a great example of why empathy isn't just this nice soft skill that people can learn as a nice to have, but really a powerful tool that can help build collaboration and team cohesion and really take it to the next level, and even translate to making a positive difference in your community, which you do obviously with your volunteer work.
Yeah, it's important. I like to give back, and that's why I want to mention, if I can share the way to happiness with your listeners, and that's just another time I get to keep doing my volunteer work.
Well, that's great. I mean, keep spreading the message. I'm glad I get to do this for you as well. And yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
This podcast is designed to help busy business leaders create an inspired and engaged workforce. I am building a community of like-minded leaders and experts who all share the same passion, taking care of people at work. Whether you are a blue-collar worker, white-collar worker, small business owner, or corporate executive, you belong in this community. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. If you know someone who I should interview or should be part of this community, please connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.